All right, we are a minute after, so we are going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to the Home Run Presales webinar series. My name is Brian Lewis. I'm co-founder and CRO of Home Run Presales. And today we have Jack Cochran, who's going to talk to us about how to demo anything in 5 minutes, turning every presentation into a conversation. Jack, how you doing?
Doing well, Brian. Good to see you.
Excellent. So I can't wait to turn this over to you in a moment. You gave a version of this presentation at DemoFest West Coast earlier this year. I was excited about that presentation, but then super bummed to find out that I was co-presenting opposite you at the same time. I was co-presenting with one of Home Run's customers, Jerry Levison at Samsara, about how pre-sales teams earn their seat at the sales forecast table. So I knew once I saw I was missing this that we had to run it back and do it again as part of the Home Run Presales webinar series. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to learn this topic, as I just mentioned. I knew it would be a hot topic. We do have a record number of registrants for today's webinar. So kudos, everyone, for wanting to level up your skill sets and learn how to be better at pre-sales. I know we also have a lot of Home Run customers and users in the audience. So hi, everybody. Welcome. And if you're not familiar with Home Run already, Home Run is the pre-sales workspace that gets you through your day with one place to track, manage, organize, and inform all of your pre-sales efforts. So if you are in pre-sales and you're an IC or a manager or a leader and you've not seen a demo of Home Run, scan the QR code in the upper right, go request a demo. We love showing it off. You should know what modern pre-sales tools look like these days and what they can do for your organization. Doesn't matter if you have a budget or a project to look for tools, or if you're even not looking for tools, just go check us out. Again, we love showing it off. So scan that QR code in the upper right. Since you're all here to learn from Jack, I'm going to give you some other learning opportunities. In the lower left, check out Home Run's YouTube channel. There's some old webinars there, including the one that I gave with Jerry about how pre-sales teams earn their seat at the sales forecast table. Jack's webinar will be posted there as well, but there's some other great videos and best practices there. So scan that one, subscribe to the channel so you can get those videos as they come in. And finally, in the lower right, scan that QR code to go to Home Run's content library off our website. If you're already on the website, it's resources, content library. There's a series of amazing pre-sales best practices guides, everything from the strategies of the most effective cybersecurity pre-sales teams to the 3 pre-sales data points you should bring to your CRO's attention, to the 4 best practices for running POCs and POVs that win deals. A lot of great stuff there. So plenty of resources for you to check out. But for the focus of today, I've known Jack going on 2 years now. We got to spend some time earlier this year at DemoFest West Coast. He's both a seasoned pro and good people. Formally, after spending nearly a decade as a customer on the customer side of things, Jack moved over into pre-sales in 2013. So he has a very unique perspective on the dual perspective on both sides on sales strategies. And so drawing from that experience on both sides of the sales process, Jack's gained really valuable insights into what works, what doesn't. And of course, today's presentation is coming into the what works side of this. He's currently the head of pre-sales for ActionIQ and the producer and host of what seems to be the very, very popular and becoming very, very popular new podcast, Beyond Presales. So definitely make sure to check that out. And as you all will hear in just a moment, Jack has what I think is the most amazing podcast / radio voice in all of pre-sales. So with that, Jack, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Brian. Well, that's I'm really hoping the voice shines through today. That it's not too early, that the voice is nice and warmed up. But thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Yes, Jack Cochran. I will be talking a little bit about Beyond Presales at the very end, so stick around for that. But we've already done a few things with QR codes, so we're going to keep the QR code thing going. I'll be having QR codes throughout the presentation, so have your phones ready to scan. That one there takes me to LinkedIn. Please do follow me. Let me know what you thought about this presentation. If you think there's something that I did awfully or that you completely disagree with, I actually would kind of love to hear it because this is an ever-evolving thing. But let's go ahead and dive right on into why you're here and what it is you're going to see. Yes, demoing anything in 5 minutes. We're going to be going through the framework, why it works, and the objections. But at the outset, now, what if I told you there was a way you could cover everything you needed to into a demonstration? You could get your audience talking, get them to open up, and never run out of time. That sounds too good to be true. Say hi to my cat who likes to walk behind me when I'm in meetings. Well, it is too good to be true. I can't guarantee you're never going to run out of time, but the others I think we can focus on. And the hope today is that you'll turn running out of time into a good thing because the conversation was so good, instead of a, oh no, we didn't get to 3 of the things that you said you wanted to see during the presentation. So that's what we're here for. Before we get into what this framework specifically is, first I want to mention what it's not, just real quick. This is not a framework on making your presentations faster. This is not a way that you're going to be able to spend less time preparing. You actually may even have to spend more time preparing, unfortunately. But before you come at me with your pitchforks, trust me, it's going to be worth it to spend a little bit more time prepping in this way. We're going to be looking at how you can make better use of the time you have in your presentations as opposed to just doing things faster. So I wanted to caveat a little bit on the demoing anything in 5 minutes. But yes, you can demo anything in 5 minutes. This is mostly not clickbait, slightly a little bit clickbait, but I am going to show you exactly how to do this. We're going to cover some objections at the end, but as you go along, there is, if you look in the bottom of your Zoom, you'll see a Q&A section. There's going to be plenty of time for Q&A at the very end. So please, as you have questions, as you have objections, if you already are thinking about why this can't work, please throw those in the Q&A. We'll be sure to address them. And additionally, if there's going to be lots of things that you might be thinking of, and trust me when I say, I've heard plenty of them. I actually heard a lot of objections from my team when I was first introducing this to them. So we'll cover off the most common things as we go along. But the origin story, why even have a new demoing framework? Why does this thing even need to exist? The seed for this started little over about a couple years ago when I was trying to figure out how to marry together different ideas from different sales frameworks into one. Think of things like your, command of the message, spin selling, challenger sale, your traditional sales methodologies, as well as your pre-sales ones, your great demos, your 6 habits, your demo to wins. And if you take a lot of the good things, a lot of all of those, the way that we demo wasn't really seeming to mash up very well with kind of the precepts of what these different methodologies we're trying to go after. And so this is the whole idea behind why this even needed to become a thing. Before I explain it to you, I'm going to show it to you. So I'm going to show you a real quick demo in 5, which is kind of funny. Of course, it's going to be quick. It's a demo in 5. I'm going to show you how it works in real life by demoing to you something hopefully everyone's familiar with, which is Spotify. Now, I don't have any way to really talk to you and get you to engage back with me. So I'm going to play both sides of the story. I'm also going to be doing this in slides, but you get the idea of what this framework is like. All right, here we go. All right, now, Mr. Customer, based upon what we talked about last time, what was most important to you was being able to effortlessly pick a genre of music that you can have going in the background because you love to listen to music and increases your productivity throughout the day. And the struggles of trying to figure out what music to play is just, it's too much, it's too difficult. What I'm going to show you is how you can use Spotify's search capability to pick an endless playlist that'll automatically provide and pick songs for you throughout your entire day. Does this sound like a good place for you to start? Customer at that point would probably say yes, hopefully say yes. If they say no, it's completely different. So we're going to pretend like they said yes. Great. So here is Spotify. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm navigating up here to the top, and I'm going to search for some electro swing, which, is a genre of music you've said you absolutely love. And here we get our results, and I have this electro swing playlist, which is exactly what I'm looking for. I click on that, hit play, and after about 8 hours worth of songs are done, if I still have more music and more work to do, it's going to automatically pick for me new songs in this genre to keep that music going. So when you described an effortless way of listening to music, what impact would this easy button have on your focus and your productivity? Be a question that I would ask. Customer Who knows how they're going to respond? Maybe they're going to talk about how it works, something that they saw, etc. And then I might go into something saying, like when we had talked last time, you'd mentioned how being able to share and collaborate with your coworkers on more music is actually very important to you. Is this still of interest? If they say it is, I would ask very simply, would you like to see it? And seen. Now, I don't even think this was completely 5 minutes. I'm not sure I've even been talking for 5 minutes yet. Maybe I have. That's kind of the idea of the demo in 5. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking. Wait, you didn't demo all of Spotify in 5 minutes. And for this, I apologize. This is the part that's a little bit clickbaity. No, the title of this presentation isn't you can demo anything in 5 minutes and be done with your meeting in 5 minutes. It's how to demo in 5 minutes and turn every presentation into a conversation. What I'm trying to do is demo something as quickly and as simply as possible, meet the needs of my customer, and start the conversation and be very and start that as quickly as we can. So here's what this looks like. And for some reason, point number 2 likes to disappear. Let's bring it in. But this is the framework that we're going to walk through for the rest of the time today. Step 1, we set the scenario. You heard me say that. Okay, we talked about the productivity with the music. So we set the scenario of exactly what it is that we were going to show. And we got agreement that this was where we wanted to start as well. And once we got that agreement, we did a simple demo, very simple demo, described it, did it as efficiently as we possibly could. And then we went deeper. We asked some questions. We asked open-ended questions that started to get at, did this even meet the needs and the benefits that we said it was going to in the first place? And what else might we want to explore? The conversation starts to happen in step 3. And then we identified, hey, there's actually, through the course of this conversation, something else that is of interest. Do you want to see that thing? Was the final question that we asked. This is the entire framework. And the reason why this works, as we're beginning into it in a very short amount, in a very short time frame here, is because we're not spending a lot of time sifting through features and showcasing and showing and demoing and making someone try to understand our software before we get to the point where they're understanding the benefits that it has to them. We're getting them talking, having them be a part of the conversation very, very quickly. So we're going to dive into that. Before I go through each of the steps, though, which is definitely what we're going to do, I want to explain a little bit about how this framework came to pass, why it's important, and actually prove to you why it's important to do it this way. And if you know anything about me, I love reading. Another QR code moment. If you scan this list, this will actually take you to a list I built on Amazon. It's not some list I get money off of, it's just a list I put together that's got the main books listed here that I used when I was putting the framework together. I feel like this sits on the heels of existing work that's already out there. If you've gone through a great demo, 6 Habits, if you read through Mastering Technical Sales, if you've even done Demo to Win, which I kind of forgot to put on the list for some reason, this builds on the heels of that and is not in conflict with that. It takes the principles and takes them to what I think is the logical next step. But where we begin from this list, the very first thought that made me think, I could maybe do stuff a little bit differently was when I was reading Garen Hess's book, Selling is Hard, Buying is Harder. He notes in his book that it's important to personalize your presentation to the person, not just the persona. A lot of the frameworks I've been working with in the past had this idea of who's the persona you're selling to, and then you build your demo around that persona, which is good. You should do that. You need to figure out if you can support the different type of people you're going to run into. It's different selling to an executive versus someone who's in the weeds. And even amongst executives, it varies wildly as well. But you're never demoing to a persona. You're always demoing to a person or two people. And we need to be able to personalize our presentations to the people that we're presenting to, right? So that was the first piece that got me thinking. And then I also thought back to a book that I had read pretty early on in my pre-sales career, which is The Trusted Advisor. And they are talking very specifically about creating situations in which the customer is going to start to express their concerns, their needs, their desires, not just asking the question, what do you need? But build a situation where they're going to feel like they can express that. And most demos, the way I had been taught at that point to demo, or the way that I was doing most of my demos, really wasn't in line with that. In fact, if we look at the building of a traditional demo, you've done all your discovery. Hopefully, please tell me you're doing discovery. If not, that's a whole separate piece that you need to do your discovery. You've done your discovery though, and then you build your meeting that looks a bit like this, your company overview, your introductions. You do your demo, which is taking all those discovery input that you have and building something that you think is going to satisfy each of those one after the other and answer all of the questions. You're really hoping that you're interpreting things correctly and presenting things that matter. And then leaving 5 minutes at the end, you're definitely never running out of time for the questions and asking them if things hit the mark and determining next steps. There's just in this too much guesswork going on, which again, a reminder, if you're having questions, please do make use of the Q&A because we will be hitting that at the very end, making sure that there's plenty of time for you as you're going along. Because from here, I have a feeling you're going to start to have questions. But speaking of things that you should do, I want to prove to you why this works by you proving to yourself why this works with some audience participation. So grab your phones, scan the QR code, or just open another browser tab and go to menti.com and use this code. If you scan the QR code, it takes you right there. And it'll ask you a question that I want us to explore together. And the question is, in the demos that you've given, what are some of the ways you judge if your demo hit the mark? So how do you measure? How do you know? So throw in there, take a couple minutes, start to think about them, let the results compile here. What are some of the ways you judge if your demo hit the mark? So I'm going to flip over to see the results of this. We'll see stuff coming in. We've got body language, engagements getting really big. We have questions, audience enthusiasm, customer feedback, smiles, next steps, internal feedback, nodding heads. I like the nodding heads. That's good. Yes. Let's see here. It's hard to see it as it's jumping around. I appreciate it. Yes, keep throwing those in there. Questions, next steps, interaction, engagement seem to be the biggest ones. Nodding heads is getting a little bit bigger as well. Maybe it's because I mentioned it. I don't know. Questions. So I'm assuming that's customers asking questions and engagement. Answering their own question, right? Yes. Future steps, client feedback connection. These are great. I love this. And I don't disagree with anything that's on here, but as we're seeing the biggest one on there, I did not see this. I did not see this because I knew what you all were going to say. And if I go back to my slides, thank you so much for all hopping in and doing that. Engagement. I didn't see this, but when I ask people, when you ask anyone, what do you judge? We judge engagement. We judge the effectiveness of our demos. Did they ask questions? Were they interested? Were they leaning in? Were they asking the question piece, right? And yet we set up our demos in a way that we are just hoping someone will interrupt us to start that engagement. We're going, you know what? I want the customer to interrupt me and then we'll have engagement. You're putting the onus on them, especially because this, for the most part, people don't like to interrupt, especially if they've sensed that you've got some really good content. You know, you spend some time with them doing discovery, right? You're doing discovery. And based on that, you built this demonstration for them. They don't want to be rude, but what you're saying is, hey, in order for this to be a conversation, you got to interrupt me. Oh, it's not working so well. I mean, let's think about this. What do so many of us, myself included, it's actually a pet peeve of mine, so it's funny that I've done this myself. What do we often say because we want to have engagement during our meetings? We say this, please feel free to interrupt me. We'll even add on, I want this to be a two-way conversation. So we're admitting in the second sentence that there's something that we want, but we're putting the onus on our customer to make this an engaging meeting. Come on, this is our job. It's our job to demo and present in a way that customers are going to have engagement. It puts them in a really uncomfortable position at the very, you've not even shown them anything yet. It's the first couple minutes of your demo and you've made them uncomfortable. So stop doing this. There's actually two things today that if you're going to only remember two things, this is one of them I want you to remember to stop doing. I'll point out the other one when we get there. This is the first one. Please stop saying this. And I'm actually going to give you something to say because for a lot of you, this is probably so ingrained in how you start that you're probably not going to be able to get out of it unless you have something to replace it with. I actually saw this with someone on my team. I asked them to stop using this phrase, and the very next call, someone on my team, he said, please feel free to interrupt me. He saw it was the train wreck he saw coming of his own language, but he couldn't stop himself because he didn't have something else to open with. So instead, open up with this. I'm going to be demoing things today as efficiently as possible. And there's plenty of times that I'm built in to make sure we're showing you exactly what you want. And there's plenty of times for you to ask those questions. I will stop to ask you if you have questions. I'll stop to make sure you're seeing exactly what you want to see. Sound good? If you start like that, the customer gets to go, oh, good. I don't have to try and break this guy's stride if I have a question. He's going to be stopping to let me ask questions. Much better way to start. So please, this is thing one that you definitely need to stop doing. Now, the second one from the mentee, if we go back to the mentee real quick, a lot of this also had to do with, the questions, the light bulb moments, etc., alongside the engagement. And the second piece that I've seen around how we like to judge is curiosity. Are we driving curiosity in the customer? That's what's leading to the questions that they're asking. Taking again from the trusted advisor here, we need to be allowing people to make different unique connections, re-soften and reform their positions when they're curious. We want them to be engaged. We also want them to be critically thinking about it. As they're curious about things, as they're able to express those curiosities, it's going to help them to remember what you said. So now you have two things. You have they're engaged and they're going to remember what you said. They had a good conversation and remembered what you said. Excellent. That's what we're exactly shooting for is that. So this is how the framework was built around those key concepts, driving engagement and building curiosity into what we demo. So going back to this, let's actually step through how it actually works. Let's get a little bit tactical here on what do you do in each step and why is each step actually important. And again, if you have questions, please throw them in the Q&A for each of these steps. There's stuff I'm not going to be covering. It could be a whole webinar on each of these steps and more. So if you have questions that you want to specifically hear, please do throw them in the Q&A. The first step is setting the scenario. You heard me do this. You heard me say, okay, what you mentioned before is really important for you to be able to listen to music. Or if you think about home run pre-sales, if you're exploring home run, this is important for you to maybe be able to have better utilization. You don't have good utilization, or maybe you don't have visibility today into the opportunities that are hitting a critical point of failure that you need to pay attention to as a leader. You're setting that kind of benefit scenario, talking about the feature you're going to specifically address, and then asking them the question, is this a good place to start? You don't have to say those exact words, but you're asking them if this is the place that you want to begin the demonstration. The format you're using doesn't matter. You could be using command of the message mantra format. You could be using a great demo situation slide. You could be using something from a tell, show, tell from demo to win. Doesn't matter. But you need to have something that sets up your conversation. But the difference here in what I'm proposing is you're only doing it for what you're going to be showing first in the first 5 minutes. You don't need to get agreement on everything you're going to show. You don't need to show them the entire agenda, the entire map of everything, and get them to say, yes, I want to see all of that. You're just saying, is this a good place to start? And usually people will say, yeah, this is a good place to start. Now, don't take my word for it. Let's actually go to what Chris White says about this from 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers. Fantastic book you should pick up as well. Scan the QR code there. Before you begin a demonstration, you want to get agreement on the objectives you're trying to address. I couldn't agree more with this. Do not proceed, do not pass, go to not. Collect $200. And as in every other part of life, silence is not consent. In fact, if someone can't answer yes to this quickly, it means it's a no. Which, think about that. You've got a demo, you're about to kick off. Is this a good place to start? And they go, no. Great. I'm glad I didn't start with something you're not interested in, right? So right off the gate, we're making sure that they're only seeing something that's important to them. So that's what step one is really all about. Setting the scenario, setting the benefit from the outset, and then getting right into where we're going to go. Once we set that up, we've gotten our yes agreement, move on to step two, which is doing a very simple demo. Here's what I mean by simple demo. No detours, no advanced topics, and no options. You're going from point A to point B as quickly and as simply as possible. Why this is important and why no advanced topics is important at this step is because most demos I hear sound like this. On this screen, you can do X, Y, and Z. Here are the many different ways that you can, blah, blah, blah. An option for doing X is to do Y or Z. Imagine if Brian came and presented Home Run to you and had said, hey, here are the 7 different ways you can view the status of your opportunities. When you had asked the question, I really need to know how I can see this current status of my opportunity. You'd be thinking, wow, this is really complicated, which is not the thought you want someone to have at this stage. You want them to get to point A to point B, see that what they're looking for is easy to get done, so they get the benefit out of it as quickly as possible. Here's a visual on that. On the left, you've got the demo, which covers everything. And honestly, as solution engineer, sales engineer, solution consultant, we love this on the left. Why do we love it? Because honestly, we love our software. And to us, the flexibility of the lots of ways to do things is part of what makes our software great, right? Like, that's awesome. You don't have to have a Kanban view. You can look at a list view. You can look at just the metrics and the reporting, all the different ways you can get at the status of your opportunities. But in a demonstration, when you're trying to help someone understand how your software can achieve a certain benefit, you need to get from point A to point B, as you see on the right, as quickly as possible with no detours. Don't take my word for it. Like I've said before, this is not built on just stuff that I think. Let's listen to what Peter Cohen has to say about this. From Great Demo, he specifically mentions great demos, not good demos, but great demos, focus on showing the audience exactly what they need, leaving out everything else that might distract. You are intentionally choosing to leave things out in order to have a great demo. If they want to see something that's in one of those other boxes here that you didn't get to, they'll ask you about it in step 3. See how we're kind of setting this up? We're doing a simple demo so that we can get to that. Now, this is very difficult for a lot of people who are used to doing this lots of features demo on the left. So here's the second thing. Again, the first thing was please stop saying, please feel free to interrupt me. The second one is to switch your language from saying, here's what you can do, to here's what I am doing. Let's think about this for a second. If I'm showcasing something, I'm saying, on this screen, you can do, I'm setting myself to say, and you also can do, and you also can do, and you also can do. If instead I've set up the scenario with the benefit, the feature I want to show, here's what I am doing. I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this. I'm going to show as simple as possible. Just doing this was actually the first thing I had my team start to do when the framework was getting built, was, hey, let's stop saying the things we can do and start saying what we are doing. Instantly made our demos easier to understand. Instantly made it so that people could follow what we were talking about. They weren't confused. We were no longer tempted to feature dump. So this is the second thing. If you're going to take just 2 things away, this is something very important. Just switch your language a little bit, and I think you'll be surprised how much easier it is actually for you to demo and easier it is for someone to follow. This is one of the reasons why this whole thing works, is because we're keeping it very focused on something very simple, very clean, and very easy to do. All right. Now the fun starts, because we've gotten the scenario, we set that up, did a simple demo, and now we get to start having a conversation. This is step 3. This is go deeper. In step 3, you get to ask questions, seek clarity, and start the conversations. We're starting with our open-ended questions. I'm not saying, does this make sense? I am so guilty of that question when I haven't prepped a question to ask at the end. But what if instead I said, hey, you wanted to have a great, you said it was really important to you to have a quick view of what opportunities are running into critical status and need your attention. What would having a view like this do for your ability to jump into opportunities? Would you feel like this would help you save opportunities? Do you feel like how would this help you engage with your team better? See, I did a closed question there. It's very difficult to do, but you really want to try to have those open-ended questions set up, where what we did from step 1 through a simple demo to step 2, we stated the benefit in step 1. We did a quick demo, and now we're asking them to confirm that the benefit was actually there. They'll say, yes, it was. No, it wasn't. Here's what I saw. Oftentimes what'll happen in this step the customer is going to instantly start to have seen other things that they're interested in and start to ask about them. And they're going to take you down a path maybe you weren't expecting, or maybe you were, but much later. It's sort of a little bit of a self-directed demo at this point. The customer really starts to be able to build a demo that works for them on the fly without you having to say, I'm going to force you to pick which way you want to go, which I know there is actually, maybe this is a hot take. I'm not a huge fan of showing kind of the map of all the different options, because I still think a customer is expecting to see for you to guide them through the demonstration. You can guide them towards the different options, but when you show them a map of everything, they do get the feeling that things start to be complex. And they also get the feeling that they're missing out on things if they don't pick all of them. So I wouldn't recommend doing that here, but you can certainly say, hey, like I did when I did my Spotify example, in our discovery, you said last time, is that still of interest to you? With the circle, you're trying to drive them back around to maybe something else you might need to show them or to talk about as well. But one thing I do want to emphasize here is try as much as you can to continue to stay focused on the benefits of your platform and not the features of your platform. And this is hard to do. And actually, John Kerr mentions this in Mastering Technical Sales, which if you haven't picked this up, this is sort of like your textbook for being a solutions engineer. Highly recommend picking it up. The third edition, I think, just came out. The most recent edition, I think it was the third, just came out recently. Great updates to it. He talks about features, advantages, and benefits, FAB, a nice little acronym there, that there are features, advantages, and benefits. And the problem that we have, because we know our software so well, is we think about the features and forget that that feature is not a benefit in and of itself, because we're so used to the benefits that it provides. We're so used to the fact that calendar syncing, like within Home Run, syncing from Google Calendars, that's a huge benefit. Well, no, that's just a feature. The benefit comes from what you do with it, which that benefit might differ from person to person based on who you're talking to, why that's important. So stay focused on the benefits as much as possible. Another great example, actually from a podcast, which unfortunately is no longer making new episodes, but the episodes are still out there. I talked to Chris White on Demo Jockeys. Link there is taking you right to that episode about his example of that nobody wants a shovel. Anyone buying a shovel really doesn't want a shovel. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of homework. Go figure out why nobody wants a shovel and what they want instead. Great example to keep in your mind of why you want to stay focused on the benefits and not just the features of your platform. But, okay. We set the scenario, got confirmation it was a good place to start. We did our simple demo. We started the conversation. We kicked stuff off. We're having a great conversation. We've now identified, hey, there's something else that we could showcase you. Before you do it, do not go from step 3 back to step 2. You have to go through step 4 first, which is, I mean, there's nothing, and you have to ask this question. It's important to be a step in and of itself. You have to ask, would you like to see that? You're driving your demo in your conversation towards this question. Because there's one of two things. You're identifying a benefit and the feature that you could show. Say, would you like to see it? If they say yes, great. You do another simple demo and you're bringing the conversation back around again. You're building a series of 5-minute demos, right? Always landing back in the conversation, making the conversations longer than the demo bits, which is great. But let's say they say no, right? You've identified a benefit, a feature that can support it, and you ask, would you like to see it? And they go, no, thanks, I'm good. I understand it. Hey, great. Guess what? How to demo anything in 0 minutes, right? Forget the 5 minutes. You've shortcut that all the way down to 0 minutes, which is, I don't know. I enjoy demoing without having to demo anything, right? That's even better. You can't have technical difficulties if you're not having to demo the thing. This is why it's very, very important, because you need the ability to be able to go around this circle, do a simple demo, get that conversation going, and confirm with them before you show them that they actually need to see it. They might say no. Normally when they say no, this is why it's really cool. They'll say something like, no, there's this other thing I've been thinking about. And it's entirely possible that what's happening right now is you're unearthing something that you missed during discovery. You're unlocking more discovery. You're allowing more curiosity for them to think about something that they even didn't think about before. Now, getting into question handling, objection handling, and how to deal with all of that is in itself an entire webinar, which there actually will be a webinar I'm running on that coming up, hopefully in this next month. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I will definitely let you all know when that actually gets scheduled. I'm really excited for that next one, which is all about turning questions and objections into discovery, which is something that is sort of the next step once you actually start utilizing this framework. But you are driving around and constantly getting that engagement. And that's really the benefits of this constant feedback, driving engagement. And you're never showing them anything they don't care about. You're only showing them what's important to them as a customer. Now, hopefully you all have had some questions. Hopefully there's some objections that you have, because we're coming up on that time very quickly. So if you've been saving your questions and saving your objections, now is the time. I will, however, answer two of them, which are the most common questions and objections that I get. So I'm going to handle them in just a second here. And because these, I think it's important to keep in mind also how this works in the context of different types of demo situations. The first objection on the left there, what about longer RFP demos or when you have a long list of requirements your customer has provided? In my mind, honestly, no different. And how you structure this, I actually take a little bit out of Just Effing Demo by Rob Falcone. He has this concept in the book, which is 30 pages long. It's on the list I showed at first. I apologize, I don't have the QR code here, but it's 30 pages long, so you can read it, and you should read it. He actually described it himself as a book you can read over a beer, so please do that. But he builds around the idea of buckets, that you should be organizing your demonstrations into buckets that can be picked up, lifted, moved around, moved to a separate meeting. And that's very much what a demo in 5 build. When you're building your demo, you need to not think about going from one thing to the other. Instead, what are the 7 buckets based on what I know that I should pre-build and be ready to go and ready to talk about? And where am I going to start? And what am I going to lead to if they don't provide me any guidance, right? Order your buckets, but don't be afraid of moving that around, right? So organize your required parts to cover the individual buckets that will each be a 5-minute demo. And the second one that I will explain the image in a second is what about our competitive differentiators? I want you to think about Flex before I tell you my take on this. Let's think about this Flex tape commercial. I'm assuming most of you have seen this. I don't know. I mean, I don't even watch TV anymore, so I don't see commercials anymore, but I remember this infomercial. It's this tape. And you can fix a boat that has a leak while it's out, in the river, on the lake, or wherever it is with this tape. Just reach underneath and slap this on there, and it's going to stick underwater. Or you can, the picture you kind of see I'm kind of covering up is there's a giant leak in your water tank. You can just slap the tape right on. It's going to fix the leak. Great. I have no need in my life to fix any containers of water or things that leak while they're actively leaking. So I'm never buying this tape. This might be the world's best tape. I'll never know, because if it doesn't matter to your customer, then it's not a competitive differentiator. It doesn't matter if you do something none of your customers do. If they don't care about it, it doesn't matter to them. Remember, you're not selling to a company, you're selling to a person. If you're a Spotify customer and you don't really enjoy listening to music on your phone, then talking about the benefits of your mobile app is not going to matter, right? So it's only a competitive differentiator if it matters to the person. Now, you may have to challenge or sell this a little bit. You can absolutely say, so a lot of our customers find this type of benefit and value. Does that matter to you? And if they say no, then you drop it, right? Because it's not important. But you can certainly bring up your competitive differentiators in that way, but you have to make sure to confirm that it matters to them and that they want to see it before you demo it. So that's the whole demo in 5. You've seen this slide a lot, but I'm going to bring it up one more time. First, you set the scenario. 2, do the simple demo. 3, go deeper. 4, ask, would you like to see that? And this doesn't have to be perfect. I've been running this framework with my team for a while. Some meetings we do the full thing. Some meetings we don't. Some meetings doesn't work quite well. But at least having this idea in your mind, I'm trying to do shorter, simpler demos in order to get to engagement and only show someone something that they want to see. When you have that idea in your mind, even if you don't run this perfectly, it's going to change the way it's going to drive more engagement. You're going to see some of those same benefits. So I highly encourage you, at least think about it, at least considering what of this could I start doing today, maybe small pieces at a time. And I think you're going to see fantastic results. So Q&A time is nearly here. Before then, the plug, you've seen the logo at the bottom of every slide, Beyond Presales, brand new podcast. We have 6 episodes out right now. No, 5. the next sixth episode comes out on Tuesday. Check out podcast.beyondpresales.xyz. Search for Beyond Presales on YouTube. Search for Beyond Presales on wherever you get your podcast. You'll find it as well. Or you can actually find the page on LinkedIn. So lots of places to go for that. Highly encourage you to listen into that. But that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop my sharing. And then let's go to the Q&A.
Yeah, awesome stuff, Jack. I'm glad we did this because, as I said, I missed it at Demo Fest, and I really wanted to hear about this topic. I am 100% guilty, and I have to believe a lot of other people are as well, about the saying, I want this to be interactive. Please feel free to interrupt and ask questions. I do that at the beginning of every one of my demos, and so now I'm like, I guess I need to rethink how to do that, because I haven't thought about, you're trying to foster engagement and a good dialogue, and that's how I think I'm doing it, but not really thinking about the psychology of putting that homework, that ask, that effort onto the customer, and people don't like to interrupt. And so, yeah, okay. So I got to rethink that one, because that's a go-to at the beginning of every one of mine. Mm-hmm. The couple questions I see coming in, I see Rue Dickinson a couple times asking about the format, and would you use the same format for a shorter demo? You have 10 minutes, you have 15 minutes versus maybe a longer 30 or an hour long demo. Would you use the same format and same structure in those shorter ones?
It works great in the shorter ones because I've actually caveated them with, we don't have much time. So I want to hit what's most important. And actually using the phrase in that context, is this a good place to start? Because we only have 10 minutes. Is a great question to ask in that, because they know they may only see one or two things, and they're in that situation much more apt to say, actually, no, can we instead talk about this other one? Mm-hmm. So I 100% would still use this concept. I mean, if you only have a 10 or 15 minute demo, you have to demo things quickly as well. So none of that really falls apart. But I think it's been especially critical when you're cut short on time, or when, for example, maybe your account executive has taken 3/4 of the meeting and you have got only a few minutes left before the end of the meeting. So absolutely would still use it there.
Okay. Yeah, and I really like the concept of, the 5-minute concept, just as we've got this thing, we're going to set it up, we're going to do it, and then see where you want to go next. I know for myself, I tend to get on a roll, as you say, as kind of on my SE hat. I know Home Run really, really well. I want to show all 17,000 things that it can do for a pre-sales team. It's really hard to kind of one focus down, but also in between each demo segment, right? The 5-minute demo, I don't always stop and pause. I mean to. That's sort of when the engagement should happen, because we're about to transition to the next thing. But sometimes I just kind of get on a roll and just sort of like keep on going, because heads are nodding and I'm feeling like it's going well. So having that end point, a stopping point that's built in, that is the pause effectively for those questions to materialize and figure out where do we want to go next. Great reminder. I'm going to take that one into my own demos as well.
Great.
Some of the other questions coming in the Q&A. So asking about, can you stack the 5-minute demos together? So 5-minute demo, 5-minute demo, 5-minute demo, kind of like the choose your own adventure. And related to that question is, how do you challenge your own AE or sales rep who maybe just wants you to show the whole platform? How do you coordinate how you're going to structure the demo?
Yeah. The AE conversation is one you definitely want to think about and address, because they're not used to it, right? They're not used to it if you're going to change the format. What I've done for when we've been with AE who may not have seen this before is I've said, hey, I'm going to demo things a little bit differently. I'm going to just give them a place to start and then kick back off in the conversation. I've got everything planned that we talked about. I'm just going to be guiding them through it via conversation. Mm-hmm. And then they're fine with that. And what actually happens, it's been really cool, because I've had AEs say, hey, for this demo coming up, can we make sure we do that, letting the customer decide if they want to see things? Because I think that'll work really well with this audience. So I'm starting to get AEs who are really requesting this format, not realizing that we're going to do it anyways, but they've started requesting this format because they're starting to see the value of people engaging in those conversations. So that's how I would do it. But you can definitely stack them one after the other. That's most common when you, like I said, you've got those RFPs where oftentimes you can still do this format even if someone has said, we don't plan on asking any questions along the way, or we don't plan on talking much.
Yeah.
Uh, Still use the format and just check in real quick. Did this meet the requirement that you had laid out for us in the document? Yes. Okay, the next piece we're going to cover is this. Is this still important to you? I'd still say you still want to ask those questions even in that context, because we did an RFP presentation pretty recently that was built this way. And as we're going through, we got to like step 7, right? We've got like lots to go through. And we say, okay, for step 7, you said you wanted to talk about this. Is that still something you want to see? And they said, nope, we got it. I think you've already covered that. Go right on to step 8. Without us stopping to ask at every pace, do you still need to see this next one? We would have lost some time that we could have gotten back by doing it that way.
Yeah, the 0-minute demo. Also,
Exactly.
and I like the idea of, we talk a lot about this, and I post a lot about this, about the sales engineer or whatever title being a proactive partner, right, in moving the deal forward. And that means engaging with your sales rep on demo strategy. And, you want to show the whole platform why. We know this about our buyer because we've done really great discovery with them. We know these things are going to be higher priorities than others, and actually have a plan for it. So you both, go into that demo with the right strategy in place. And the more you do that and see better and better results, your sales rep kind of comes along with you on that ride, because they kind of recognize, okay, you know what you're doing here, and we're going to close more deals. And thanks, Syed, for that question. So Pam Dunn asked about, in step 4, is it important to ask open-ended questions, or is it more a yes or no important? Of where do you want to go next? What do you want to see?
Yeah, when you're trying to direct the conversation next, you're trying to zero in on, here is a feature that we have. Is this important to you? That's usually going to be a yes or no question. It's important at the beginning of step 3, when you're going deeper, to ask open-ended questions. What would the impact of this be to your business? How different is this from the process you have today? Is this, so those are the good place you have the open-ended questions. But as you're starting to direct into a possible next step for the demo, go ahead and ask those yes or no questions. Would you like to see it? Is this important to you? Would you be interested in seeing this feature? However you want to phrase that, because you need to get to a yes or no fork in the road. You need to get them to say, yes, I want to see that, or no, I don't want to see that, very specifically. Because otherwise, if it's left open-ended and they then talk about how the benefits that they could see, you go, great, let me show you that. And they might be saying, no, 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 I already get that. I don't need to see it. So you have to make sure you get that yes, no question answered before you hop back into step 2.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, because we've, I think, been trained in pre-sales to kind of get away from the does that make sense, yes or no question, and ask more of the open-ended question about, if you had this today, what kind of value would you achieve, or how is it different? But that's a different kind of question for a different part of the demo. As you're saying, you're directing traffic at this point, kind of, do we go left or right? It's a, do we do this or not do this? We've already done our open-ended question, if there's going to be one, about benefit
Right.
value. Now it's, where do we go next?
That's right.
That makes sense. All right, so we've got Steve Dworak asking, adding to your explanation, how do you handle when you have discovered N number of different capabilities that you need to cover? Do you split these into N different 5-minute vignettes, or do you level set all of them up front and then cover each one in a 5-minute framework? So kind of go as you go, or sort of set the whole stage and then figure out the path?
Yeah. If there are multiple things that can be covered through a single simple demo, then you can group them together. If either you've been given a list of requirements or you've done discovery, you've uncovered a lot of things, absolutely start your conversation saying, with that typical setup slide that usually AEs will cover what we heard last time. And then you can say at the start, we're going to cover all the things you said you wanted to hear. And you're saying, here's why I want to start. That's why it's important to not say, are you good with this demo I'm about to show you, when you set up the simple framework in step 1. In step 1, you're setting the initial scenario and asking if it's a good place specifically to start.
Mm-hmm.
Just that little word lets them know there's more to come.
Yeah.
I actually had a meeting earlier this morning earlier this week, where we were talking with someone and they weren't really quite sure about how things lined up. And they weren't really sure, if, even before we began, if we were going to meet the needs of what they needed. And so we hopped right in and said, you know what? We know this is one thing you care about because you talked about it. is this a good place for us to start? And they went, you know what? Yeah, let's start there
Mhm.
because at least we can see that.
Yeah.
And so it's a good way to so they don't feel like they have to agree to everything. They don't have to agree to all of their requirements, but just pick a good starting point.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's how I would do that. Like making sure you've acknowledged that there are multiple things, but you're still picking a starting point. But it might be if you've got 7 requirements, you may need 7 or more
Yeah.
little demo vignettes.
Okay.
This does work because we've done it. This does work for full day workshops. You just have a lot of these buckets you have to go through, which is fine. Like you're
Yeah.
opening up for more conversation during those meetings.
Okay. No, it makes sense. And then I'm looking in the Q&A here. Pam also had a follow-on question, which was similar about if you do you share all of these 5-minute loops up front to say this is what we're going to go through based on what you told us was important. And also David had a follow-on question around, would you use a set the scene slide, or just get right into the demo and kind of go as you go? And I think, I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like, from some of the stuff you're talking about is if you're doing one of those a larger, say, RFP style demo. There are 27 different things that were in the RFP. Maybe you've, narrowed it down to a subset that are going to be the most important ones, and you kind of work through being a little bit different, maybe from a first demo, which is still going to be good discovery in order to figure out what we need to show. But, at least in like home runs example, when we do it, there's reporting KPIs and metrics, which is going to be geared more towards the managers. There's a whole team management module geared more towards managers. There's the day in the life of the IC and what we call the workspace. There's the integration side of it. And so we can kind of break down our own demos and the major capabilities and kind of think through those 5-minute versions. And we'll often up front say, we're going to go through this part and then this part and then this part, kind of in that order.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to add to it? So it is kind of setting up the stage a little bit, but I like the idea of then incorporating into at the end of each one of those, do we want to kind of almost like a reconfirmation? Do we want to go next into this?
Yeah. You do want to be a little bit careful about, that's why I said, it this fits on the coattails of whether you're doing demo to win, 6 habits, great demo,
Mhm.
whatever kind of pre-sales demo framework you're used to, this attaches onto the end of that and I think that takes it kind of to the next logical step of driving more engagement through those. It's not meant to
Yeah,
replace them. So if
sure.
your shop is a great demo shop and you use situation slides, use your situation slide. Like
Yeah.
I'm not against that at all. Use your situation slide, follow all that. It's just changing the format of how you're setting those up for engagement. I think a danger though of setting all of the things out front first, I kind of mentioned this before as well, is that if at the outset you say, here's all the different things we're going to have the chance to go through, and there's something in there they don't agree with, they get caught up on that. Or if you don't get to all of them, now there's this feeling of I didn't see everything. Or what usually happens, especially if you have a pretty complicated piece of software that you're selling or a complicated set of services that you sell, you seem too complicated. And you
Right.
want to make sure you seem simple. Like that's the point of this, is to drive the conversation in simpler, easier to use chunks. And so I don't I kind of advise against the letting someone pick or saying here's all the different things that are available at the outset, and try to keep it as small as possible. But again, it doesn't always work. It's a framework that, so long as you have this in your mind, if you have to adjust it because you're like, you know what, they've said we absolutely have to see these 3 things
Mhm.
in our demo. You know what? Mention you're going to show all 3 things.
Yeah. Yep.
Set them at ease at the outset. So you have to kind of, again, this is the whole point of demoing to a person, not a persona.
Yeah.
What does the person need? What will make the person most comfortable in my presentation?
Yeah, and I know you've mentioned, a bunch of the great thought leaders in pre-sales, including, like the great demo methodology. I saw Paul Pierce's comments in the chat, but it's kind of the great demo and Peter Cohan's quote around, show the most important thing first. If you've done really good discovery and there are a few things that are the most important, then naturally those are going to be where you start. But getting that buy-in on the next step, because things might have
Mhm.
changed, and also the first vignette might have got them to think a little bit differently, and so
Yeah,
getting some direction, I think, in those pauses and that question is that great way of getting engagement without having to force somebody to interrupt to say, I don't want to see that, and then they have to now sit for another 5 minutes while you demo it, when had you asked, they could have said, no, we're good on that one. We don't need to see that anymore. Yeah.
exactly. It's exactly right.
One other question in the Q&A coming in from Dan Harvey says, if your product requires significant, less interesting level setting, do you shove it down their throats before asking the first, is this a good place to start?
Yeah. I actually sell software that requires a lot of level setting, but what I found is that people have probably level set a fair amount before they meet with you. And try and figure out what you can showcase that makes sense as a first place to start without having to do that level set. Even if it's going to cause them, especially if you showing them that one piece that you don't have to level set much, will cause them to go, okay, how did we get here? Because what a great way for them to start engaging with you. How do we get here? I don't understand. So is your data, whatever they're going to start asking. Great. You've just opened up the doors for engagement. The less level setting you do, the more it allows you to respect them as intellectuals that maybe they've already figured that out, or allows them to ask the question that begins that engagement. So figure out if there's something that you can showcase that doesn't require much explanation as a good place to start. Especially because you can say, I'm going to not talk about how the data got in there or the API connections we had to do or whatever else it is, to say, we're going to show from a business user perspective a couple of these things that line up to this benefit that you're looking for. And then we're going to go from there.
Yeah.
Is that a good place to start? So I think I get it, because I face the same thing with my software, but the more you can see at what level they need the level setting after you get through the first part, the better.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I think some of the, you kind of said something interesting in there, which is, I'm not going to show you this. You're giving a nod towards something that could be important, and maybe in an actual implementation in real life is going to be important. But for today, of course, data can come in. We don't really need to go through that, but it also gives somebody an opportunity to say, well, wait, actually, I do need to see that too. So I like the idea of giving some nods to some of the stuff we're not going to do, to see if somebody bites on it, and as a way to kind of not have to have a full, say, 5-minute prepared on it, but if it does become important or gets elevated for some reason, they can latch on to it. Yeah,
that's right.
Stuff. Okay. Well, I think that if I just do a quick scan through, I think that covers all of the questions in the chat and the Q&A, and also basically takes us to time. So, Jack, really thank you so much for the presentation today. This was really helpful. I know I've kind of been giving some of my own comments back about how I'm going to bring it into our home run demos. So that's wonderful. And also thanks for everybody for participating in the chat and the Q&A. We'll encourage everybody. So Jack gave we're going to get this posted on the Home Run YouTube channel, but definitely go check out the Beyond Presales podcast. Check out Home Run. Come get a demo. We love showing it off. Check out the Home Run YouTube channel as well, and go get that great content in the Home Run content library. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Thanks again, Jack.
Thank you.